I hope you and your family enjoy this timeless classic, Edwin in the Fairy Dance. Edwin in the Fairy Dance. In a small village surrounded by rolling hills and ancient woodlands lived a young man named Edwin. Edwin was kind, honest, and clever, but he had been born with a hunched back. This made his shoulders rise higher than his head. The people of the village were polite enough to his face, but behind closed doors, they often whispered about his deformity. Edwin didn't mind their whispers much, except when it came to Edith. Edith was the loveliest girl in the village, with golden hair that fell in waves and eyes as clear as a summer sky. To Edwin, she was perfect. She was kind to everyone and had a laugh like church bells on a crisp morning. Edwin loved her with all the quiet, steadfast love of a man who never expected love in return. He often dreamed that if she could see past his back and into his heart, she might feel the same way. But Edith's attention had been stolen by someone else, Sir Topaz. Sir Topaz was as handsome as he was proud, with broad shoulders, fine clothes, and a smile that could win over even the stoniest hearts. The village folk adored him, and he knew it. Wherever Sir Topaz went, people stopped to admire him, and Edith was no different. She seemed dazzled by his charm, and Edwin couldn't blame her for it. One evening, Edwin wandered through the forest. The moon had risen full and bright, casting silver light over the narrow paths. He often walked when his heart felt heavy. The quiet of the woods eased his thoughts. But that night, as he walked deeper and deeper into the trees, he realized he had lost his way. He stopped and looked around. The forest seemed unfamiliar. Trees loomed tall and dark, and the silence felt thick and strange. Then, far in the distance, he saw a soft glow. It flickered like a firelight but was brighter and more golden. Edwin, curious despite his unease, decided to follow it. The glow led him to a clearing, a place he had never seen before. In the center of the clearing sat the ruins of an old stone hall, its walls crumbling and covered in ivy. Light spilled from its broken windows, and as Edwin crept closer, he heard music. It was the most enchanting music he had ever heard, sweet and lilting like the call of 100 flutes. It seemed to come from inside the ruined hall. Edwin's heart raced as he approached the doorway, and when he peeked inside, his breath caught. The hall was alive. 100 golden candles floated in the air, their flames steady and bright. The broken walls shimmered with magic, beautiful again under the spell of the music. A crowd of small, sparkling people danced across the floor. Fairies. Edwin had heard the old tales but never believed them. Yet there they were, whirling and twirling in silken clothes, their laughter like bells. At the center of the dance stood a man and woman who could only be their king and queen. The king wore a cloak of midnight blue and a crown that seemed made of starlight. His partner, the queen, floated beside him, her gown shimmering like sunlight on water. Edwin was so entranced that he almost didn't notice when the music stopped. The fairies turned as one, and the king's gaze met Edwin's. "What mortal dares intrude upon our revels?" the king said, his voice deep and commanding. It echoed off the stone walls. Edwin swallowed hard. He knew the fairies could be dangerous, especially to trespassers. Still, he stepped forward and bowed as best as his back allowed. "Forgive me, your majesty," Edwin said. "I did not mean to intrude. I lost my way in the woods, and the light led me here." The fairy king narrowed his eyes. "And why do you wander the woods at night with such a heavy heart?" Edwin hesitated. Lying to the fairies would be foolish, so he told the truth. "There is a girl, Edith, whom I love, but she does not love me. I am not a handsome man, and I carry a burden on my back. That is my sorrow." For a long moment, the hall was silent. Then the king nodded slowly. "We fairies do not harm those who speak the truth," he said. "Your honesty is rare among mortals, and it pleases me. Tonight, Edwin, you shall dance with us. Perhaps your heart will feel lighter by morning." Before Edwin could protest, a small fairy girl with silver hair darted forward, taking his hand. "Come join me, mortal," she cried. "I am Mabel, and I shall be your partner." The music struck up again, faster and livelier than before. Edwin found himself swept onto the dance floor. His feet, clumsy and heavy in the real world, moved lightly and gracefully here. Mabel spun him around and around, laughing, and Edwin felt joy bubbling up inside him. For the first time in years, he forgot about his back, about Edith, and about Sir Topaz. The fairies feasted after they danced, and Edwin joined them. The food appeared on golden plates without anyone serving it, and the goblets filled themselves with sweet wine. Everything tasted of sunlight and springtime. Edwin laughed with Mabel, watched the fairies perform tricks and tumbling feats, and felt as though he belonged. At last, the king rose to his feet. "Edwin," he said, "your heart is true, and you have danced well. For this, I shall grant you a gift." Edwin's eyes widened. "A gift, your majesty?" The king smiled. "When you leave this hall at dawn, the burden on your back will trouble you no longer. Go now, and live well." Before Edwin could thank him, the candles flickered and the music stopped. A cold wind rushed through the hall. The fairies vanished into the shadows, and Edwin suddenly found himself alone in the ruined clearing, the sky growing light in the east. He touched his back and gasped. The weight he had carried his whole life was gone. He stood straighter, taller than ever before. Tears filled his eyes as he laughed, spinning around and around under the rising sun. The news spread quickly through the village. People stared at Edwin in wonder. Amazed by his transformation, he was no longer the hunched boy they had known, but a man who stood tall and confident. When Edith saw him, her cheeks flushed, and for the first time, she looked into his eyes. "Edwin," she said, "you look different." "Perhaps I was always like this," Edwin replied with a smile. "It just took a while for the world to see." Soon, Edwin and Edith grew close. Edith, seeing Edwin's kindness and courage, loved him in return. All seemed perfect until Sir Topaz heard the tale. Sir Topaz could not stand the thought of Edwin being admired more than him. It was fairy magic, he sneered, nothing more. Yet jealousy burned in him like a fire. If Edwin could win the fairies' favor, so could he. One evening, Sir Topaz set out for the woods. He found the ruined hall under the moonlight and strode inside. He was both confident and bold. The fairies were there, just as Edwin had described. The music stopped, and the fairy king turned to him. "What mortal dares intrude upon our revels?" the king asked. "I am Sir Topaz," he announced, puffing out his chest. "I have come to see your wonders and claim the same gift you gave Edwin." The king's gaze darkened. "And why should we grant you such a gift?" Sir Topaz faltered. He couldn't admit his jealousy. I lost my way," he lied. "I was drawn here, just as Edwin was." The hall fell silent. The fairies whispered among themselves, their faces sharp and unkind. "You lie," the king said softly, "and we do not suffer liars." Before Sir Topaz could protest, a fairy named Robin, known for his mischievous tricks, seized him. With a laugh, Robin lifted Sir Topaz high into the air and flung him upward. Sir Topaz's back caught on a beam, and there he dangled, his legs kicking helplessly. The fairies danced and feasted beneath him, ignoring his cries. When dawn approached, Robin let him drop to the cold stone floor. The fairies vanished, and Sir Topaz lay there alone. He groaned and pushed himself up, but something was wrong. He reached behind him and froze. A hump had grown on his back, heavy and cruel. When Sir Topaz returned to the village, he was no longer the handsome man everyone admired. People gasped when they saw him, whispering that he must have angered the fairies. Edith, who had seen his pride and cruelty, turned away from him. As for Edwin, he and Edith were married in the spring. Edwin never spoke of the fairies again, though he sometimes wandered into the woods at night, wondering if he might hear their music once more. The village learned an important lesson. Beauty fades, and pride can ruin a man. But honesty, kindness, and courage, those are gifts no magic can take away. And in the woods, under the silver moon, the fairies still danced. The end.